and the following things came up. Well, what's a big deal if I tax? What's a big deal if I do this? If I hit a light on Shabbos? I'm not a bad person. I still care about people. Okay. So I'm going to say like this. Any one of you that are here, if I told you there's $5,000 involved, but you have to eat a pig on Yom Kippur, who would do it? Okay, that's cute. But back on planet Earth, if you weren't on acid, would you do it? And the answer is, I hope not. And why wouldn't you do it? I'll tell you why. Because in your mind, you're like, that's something I can't do. I may be able to do that, but I definitely can't do that. Here's the thing. When you text on Shabbos, when you're touching a light, when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, you're doing something that's very great, even though it doesn't seem like it is. It says in the Pirkei Avos, "Veheve zahira mitzvah kala shekechamora she'ena teodea matan shel skaron shel mitzvot." And what that means is, be careful with a light mitzvah as you would be with a heavy mitzvah. Why? What's the difference? Well, the difference is one is easy to do and one's hard to do. So a lot of people figure, this is hard, not eating in Yom Kippur, so for sure I'm going to do this. But helping that old lady across the street, it's no big deal, so you're not going to do it. When Hashem is telling you, no. Sometimes the things that you think are easy could actually be worth more. So you have to consider that. Number two, sometimes in the 1930s and the 1940s, people used to smoke cigarettes. And I know people don't do it that much anymore, but back in the day it was prevalent everywhere in society. The question is, how could they do that if they knew that it was going to kill them? And the answer is they didn't know it was bad for them. That's why people smoked. But if they knew that it was bad for them, at the time when they were doing it, they didn't think there was anything wrong. But in reality, they were killing themselves. They just didn't know it. So sometimes when you're doing something wrong, even though physically you feel the same, spiritually, you could be doing something wrong. Here's something to consider. You have 365 bones, 248 sinews and muscles in the body. You have 365 negative commandments and 248 positive commandments. That equals 613. That would then mean that whoever created the human body and whoever wrote the Torah, which we know who that is, they already knew that 613 mitzvahs would coincide and be equal to the 613 bones and sinews in the body, in the muscles. That's an amazing thing. Another reason why you know that Hashem wrote the Torah. But here's some other stuff we have to consider about texting on Shabbos. There's an idea in Judaism of separating. We know that we have milk and meat, we separate. We know that we have kosher and treif, we separate. We know there's chametz and then there's matzah. We know that there's shatnez, wool and linen. We know that you marry a Jew or a non-Jew. There's always a separation between the two things. Why? Does anyone know what panning for gold is? When you were a kid in the 1800s and you wanted to make money, you'd run away from home and you'd go sit on the riverbanks and you'd scoop up the dirt and you'd spin it around and create a force where all the impurities would move to the side and you would separate the purities from the impurities. The purities ended up being valuable metals, which we know as gold. That's how they did it. They separated. So by us keeping Shabbos, by us marrying Jewish, by us keeping a different name, by keeping a different language, by keeping different commandments that they did that other people don't do, we're separating because we're holy. That's the whole thing. We brought monotheism into the world. It was the Jew that brought it into the world. That is what forced the second president of the United States, John Adams, to proclaim, no man has done more for the world than the Jew. We created monotheism in the world. How? By us following God's Torah. One of the things about being holy that we have to appreciate is we live in a world where, does anyone know who John Gotti is? John Gotti was a killer. He killed Paul Castellano of the Gambino family. He was a complete killer. But the thing is, he wore nice clothing. He had this going on. Where do you think I get that from? John Gotti. Every time he'd walk out of jail, he'd have all these people. He'd be like, how you doing? And everyone was like, this guy's awesome. I love this guy. Right, but he has 3 dead bodies in the trunk of his car. That's not important right now. So it ended up being where everyone was like, no big deal. He's great. We love him. He ended up going to jail and dying. He was an evil man. But at the time, no one knew. Look at Bruce Jenner. Well, you might not recognize that name. Caitlyn. That's right. There was a time where he was a man. Now he wears a dress. Sounds funny, but it's actually true. And he changed his name too. And I guess we don't really know the distinction now between a man or a woman. And they're in Congress now discussing what kind of bathrooms they should have. And then we know about Arafat. Now, Yasser Arafat. Who knows who Yasser Arafat is? Of course you know who Yasser Arafat is. He killed all the Jews. He was a baby killer. Do you know what the world did for Mr. Arafat, this wonderful, brilliant statesman who compared himself to Abe Lincoln, who took out his gun holster in 1974 at the U of N and placed it on the podium and said he will not rest until every Jew is in the sea. Do you know what happened to this man? He was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. Do you know what that means to me? It means to me that I couldn't care less what the world considers to be what's right. I want to know what's holy and good and what's bad. And the only way that I can do that is by separating. And that is one of the reasons why we keep Shabbat. Just like Hashem worked for 6 days and on the seventh day he rested, we're copying God. And God says to you, I know you think it's going to be difficult. I know you think you're going to lose money, but it's quite the contrary. I'm going to make sure you make more money. Anyone who goes to yeshiva day school knows how expensive it is. How could that be? How could we afford to pay for it? Because Hashem says, you keep my mitzvahs, and I'm going to make it happen for you. Happens all the time. Let me show you another thing. The question is, why are we here? Everyone ever think about that? Not from a Jewish standpoint. Let's look at it from a completely, there's no God, God forbid we should believe that. Why are we here? I'm going to go around the room. Avi, we're starting with you because I like that look. I like that look. Why are we here, Avi? Why did God put us here?